Greetings, welcome, welcome. So I haven't posted a video in a little while, and I have been doing a lot of work, but a lot of it's not so much that it was negative studies or something like that. It was just, it's like, no, I need to rewind this, and I need to keep track of the number of winds, and I need to pay closer attention, what's the induction here. Because with what I'm looking at, there's so much unpredictable behavior and variability, and I'm just trying to look for trends in general. But to get back on topic, this is another in a series of looking at something that is, I'd say, a kissing cousin to what Thane Hines has done and is doing in Canada with the bitoroidal transformer. I've got a bitoroidal transformer. The only difference is I don't have different materials. I just have two air-gapped E-cores, and I'm seeing some funky stuff with it. And one of the things that I'm trying to nail down is, am I really seeing what I think I'm seeing? And I haven't seen any problems with how I calculated things previously when I'm looking at it with, say, a 1,000 ohm resistance load or a 100 ohm resistance load. And so I was 90% certain, and then I did the first battery test. There's a gnat around. And initially I was like 99.9% certain. Then I went back and I put a resistor on the batteries. It wasn't a surface charge, but the batteries weren't fully charged. And so now I'm back to 92.53% certain that I'm seeing what I'm seeing. So in other words, the batteries per the voltage looked like they were fully charged, but they weren't fully charged. And in a sense, that's actually a relief, because I was looking at it and it's like, this is a COP of like 10. What the heck's going on? I mean, I'm calculating a COP of 2, and for reasons that I won't get into now, I could see that it might be like a COP of 3. But this is crazy. And so I was thinking maybe it's something to do with nickel metal hydrides. There may be something going on there, but in other words, the battery test was promising, but still not fully confirmed. So I wanted to go back and kind of just get down in the weeds with the thing again. One of the things was I should be able to see this like pulse by pulse, going from one cap into another cap. Get rid of the resistive load and all that. Just go cap to cap, and you should be able to see what you're looking for. And initially I looked at that and said, no, garbage. I'm sure I'm not. And then I thought about it again, and I forgot that the voltage is swinging from, say, 10 down to -7. And so I was calculating it as, my gosh, I'm getting I'm getting 3 volts out on the secondaries, and I from the 2 secondaries, and I consumed 10, but I actually consumed 4, and I'm like, this is like such a weird project. It's so hard to but it actually, I think it does confirm it. So now we're back up to like 97%. And I think we'll start with that. I'll show you that first and show you what I'm talking about. And we'll just mention bitoroidal again. I'll just get this out of the way like now in case anyone's replicating this. I think one of the things that's important is, gosh, I don't know where to begin. The reason why this is so goes back to the work that I did 2-3 videos ago, just looking at a buck boost converter and how it behaves with a cap discharging, whether you're discharging the cap to 0 or discharging the cap as negative as it can go. So, I mean, you have to watch, you don't have to, but that video kind of guided my thinking on what the heck's going on here. But to sort of bottom line it, the secondaries, it looks like your best efficiency is where they're at, ending up at a voltage approximately between 50 to 70% of your input voltage. And so there's a lot of stuff going on with the turns ratio with winds, the air gap. I think that all comes into play, but I'm thinking a good part of this, one thing that's very important, you load it to the point where the secondaries are at about half to 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the voltage that you're inputting, and that's where you get the really interesting stuff. So let's have me shut up now, and I'll try and run through some experiments quickly that have worked. And I've already done these, so I'm just sort of repeating them. Actually, there's one that I haven't done yet, and hopefully I've gone for like 5 hours on that one. But let's get to work. So, once more, here is our bitoroidal transformer, which just happens to be 2 air gap decores. And the reason this thing is special is because you pulse the primary with the cap, and you keep control of the timing with the Arduino, and shoots out into the secondaries, and then you pull off your load from the secondaries, and the back EMF can flow back into here, except for there's an air gap now, and so it's a little bit tougher for the back EMF to flow back to the primary, not, you know, greatly tougher, but a little bit, than it is for the back EMF to flow over to the other secondary. And when it does that and you load the other secondary, the two are synergistic. And that's really the neat thing about this. So on the one hand, it would be nice to try to change the magnetic permeability of this path versus this path with different materials. On the other hand, it's kind of nice that you can see something interesting just by ordering 2 air gap decores. So the first thing, as I said, if I am seeing something funky, then I should be able to see it not just when I load the secondaries with 1,000 ohms or 100 ohms, or when I'm going battery to battery, which, as I said, promising, but still not entirely confirmed. I should be able to see it pulse to pulse. And so that's what we'll do here. And I would say very, very, very promising, but not confirmed. Okay, then, experiment number 1. So we have a 10 UF cap, and we charge it up to 10 volts. And then off of your 2 secondaries, through the full wave bridge rectifiers, we have a 10 UF and a 10 UF. So all I'm doing right now, and I'm getting rid of a lot of the code. All I'm doing is I'm charging up the 10 UF, this one, and then I'm discharging it for on time. Now on time is guided by the calculated resonant frequency of this and this. However, when this is loaded, the resonant frequency is a bit different where this goes most negative. People in comments have tried to explain that to me. I still don't really understand it, but it is what it is. So you have to fish around. That's, you kind of just do a little frequency sweep. It's always in the ballpark of the calculated value, but it's a little bit faster the more and more you load it. So we just charge this thing up and then discharge it one time up to 10 volts and then see what you get on the secondaries. And so here's what happens. You charge it up to 10, and this is about the best place. You could fish around a little more, maybe do a couple percent better. Negative 6.03. And of course, the way we have the circuit set up, is you take that -6 and then just charge it to -10. But anyway, so 10 to -6, and we're getting, come on, 3.12 there, and come on, 3.1 there. So when I first looked at this a few days ago, I initially said, oh, you know, that stinks. There's 10 volts, 3 volts, 3 volts. This is horrible. I must have done some calculation wrong. This is all nonsense. And then I remembered you're only going from -6 to 10. So really your voltage here is 4 volts. So you're expending 4 volts in 110 UF. You're getting 3.08 out of one. You're getting 3.11 out of the other. So that's just another brief little thing that, yeah, as far as I can tell, something funky's going on. So I'll just kind of mention and then go through a little bit of the things I was looking at as well. One of the things I did was I just pulsed this unloaded and saw how, you know, how good of a Q factor could I get. And I could get this to swing from like 10 to -9. And then I took a big 10-pound air core and I did the same thing. And what I was interested in, and I know this from a lot of previous experimentation, is that until you run into other issues, such as a skin effect or the core losses, the Q factor improves as a function of the pulse time over the tau time of your coil. And your tau time is defined as the induction over the resistance of the coil. I don't know where I read it, or you know, even if it's maybe it's apocryphal or something, but I think Tesla at one point said, I'm looking at coils of high induction and low resistance. So what I wanted to do, because of the huge core here, this thing has a low resistance and a high induction. And you can look at what the ratio is there. The big 10-pound coil, because it's a big 10-pound coil of thick wire, has a high induction and a low resistance. The ratio of the induction to resistance is actually a little bit better with this. And what I wanted to tease out was how big an extent are the core losses. So in other words, because the ratio of induction to resistance, the tau time, is better with this one, this thing should flip more negative than even the big 10-pound coil. And in fact it did, but not as much as I might have expected. So in other words, there are some core losses, but they're not dramatic, and that's what I was hoping for. There are some core losses going on, but they're not dramatic. Now the next thing I did, and I did this with this, you know, this setup, and I also did it with the 10-pound coil, was just to let it ring, and then to go from a 10 UF to a 4.7 UF. Now I could have gone smaller than that. The problem is, once you go beyond like 4.7 or 2.2 UF, you're not going to be able to capture a reading here. It just drains out of there too quickly. But what you can do is put it on an oscilloscope, and you can see how well it rings. And so I looked at how well this one rang versus a 4.7 UF. I guess I could show that. I think I've showed this previously. So what I did here is I set the on time to 14,000 microseconds, which what that does is it gives us 10 oscillations of this and this. And this is what we see on the oscilloscope. And I think I've shown this before, but I'll show it again. So now we'll do the same thing where we'll set it up with the timing where you get 10 oscillations, but we'll put in a 4.7 UF. So when we do the exact same thing with a 4.7 UF and let it ring 10 times, then this is what we see on the oscilloscope. And you can see that it's a higher Q factor. It's dampening out considerably slower. Not considerably, but moderately slower than the last one. And so my thinking was, well, this has to be better when I go with loading it. When I went with loading it, the 4.7 UF didn't do any better than the 10 UF, maybe a little bit worse. However, the voltage was out of the secondaries was much lower. So it was actually more distorted than the 10 UF. However, if it had been equalized to the same voltage on the secondary, I'm convinced that this one would do better because of what I just showed you. There's one last thing we'll do, and then we'll wrap it up, because this is something I haven't done yet, and then we'll wrap it up. But what I'm saying is that there's a particular voltage here that you want to shoot for. And one of the things, I think I initially was thinking, you want a huge turns ratio. I think maybe you even want the turns about matched for best behavior of this little fella. It's so unpredictable, it's hard to say, but it's not hard to get something where you're saying, well, what is that? Before we do the last thing, I'll just run at 10 UF at 10, 20, and 30 volts and show you the calculated in and out again. Actually, screw it, it'll be like a 5-hour video. So I'll just mention what I did before. Here it was at 10 volts, that's in, that's out, that's the ratio. At 20 volts, and that's with this particular setup, 20 volts, and at 30 volts. So a nice, clean improvement. And one of the next videos I'll do will be to pick an 80 or 100 volt solid state relay off a DigiKey and what you want to look for. But this is really nice, but I think we can do better. And I think there needs to be less of a difference less of a turns ratio. This needs to be closer to these. And I think it'll do even better, because I've seen better before. I'm just trying to, I was kind of throwing things together. The last thing I want to do is just let this thing ring, because I know it gets really distorted when it goes in here, but anything that it has where it's still ringing, you've got a full wave bridge rectifier, and what you should see is more out when you let it ring. All right, it stinks. There's a little bit more out of here. Instead of like 3.2 or 3.3, it's up to 3.7. And the same over here, but this is now, you could set it to where it discharges all the way to 0, and maybe you get 3.8 out of there. And likewise there. So that is definitely not OU, which it would have been nice, but it's not. So that doesn't work. All right, that's it for this video. What I want to do going forward, like in the immediate future and in the intermediate or medium term future, I want to try to get this thing out to a few watts, and I think it's going to be tough to go way beyond that, but get it out to a few watts and see if I can get a few watts out of this Fokker. And part of that will be getting a different solid state relay than the 60 volt Comus AC37. And I've found some nice 80 volt ones and some nice 100 volt ones. I'm having trouble finding anything higher than that that would fit the need. At least that's in stock on DigiKey, and DigiKey is, like the Amazon of electronics. So I'm not sure how easy it would be to go past 100 volt with solid state relay. So as I said, get this putting out a few watts, and then what I want to do after that, I mean, you could look at, I think it was the Tom Bearden approach of, basically if you had a magnet there, can you guide where the back EMF is going because of the magnetic field that's established by a permanent magnet. That's how I understand it. I haven't looked at it. I haven't read much on it, but that's how I understand it. I could look at that. I sort of don't want to. Well, I'll tell you what I want to look at. Oh, what the hell just happened? What I want to look at going forward is two things. First is with an air core, how much can you improve the Q factor? Okay, let's leave it at that. The second is, can you do this kind of parlor trick with air cores? And it was someone who made a comment that I've actually thought about a great deal, that if you had 3 air cores, you could think of them as pancake coils, but I'll make them what I'll call dunce cap coils because it would be far, far easier to wind. Can you have the coil in the middle essentially blocking what you're drawing off? And I don't know if that would work. But if it would, then you get rid of a lot of the complexity here of all of this, the core there. And, then you're out to a situation like where Tesla put the antenna up in the electric car and said, okay, we got power, we're ready to go. So, sorry. But I want to look at it and see if I can do it without this now that I know the concept. And I'm not sure if I'll get anywhere with that or not. I think I will, but we'll have to see. But the first thing is, let's get this out past a 0.5 watt and see if we can get it back up to COP of 3 or in excess. I'm putting a stretch goal of 4, and then confirm it with batteries. So that'll be nice. All right, so thanks everyone who may have watched to this point, and stay healthy. Thank you for your attention. Talk to you later. Bye.